In the last episode of The Enchanted Duke, the St. Clare brothers had recently returned from Vauxhall's opening night's Pavilion Gallery, which featured local and renowned artists' work. There, Gabriel and Julian had finally located an artist whom they believed could do justice to the Duchess and Dowager Duchess's likenesses, and hoped it would help Gabriel's daughter Amelia start to heal from her grief and withdrawal since the loss of her mama and grandmama. They'd sent their commission offer to the artist E.G. Everley, a relatively new artist in London. Unbeknownst to E.G. Everley, the artist's pseudonym, she and Julian St. had met the previous week at an art exhibition, but had not exchanged names. Their chance meeting and their discussion over a William Turner stormy seascape lingered in both of their minds, with each of them finding it difficult to forget. Evie, after receiving the offer, had hesitated briefly, recalling an incident that had occurred when she'd trained in Florence under Maestro Vescari. We begin Episode 3 with Evie, E.G. Everley, assessing the brothers' fire-damaged family portraits in the gallery back room. Episode 3 of The Enchanted Duke, the Commission Review. Chapter 7, Cavendish Gallery. Morning light spilled across the parquet floor, illuminating canvases stacked like quiet memories. A carriage had just departed, the faint sound of wheels and the clip-clopping of horses fading down the street. Evie stood before the newly arrived portraits, their surfaces marred by smoke and flame. A faint scent of varnish and soot still lingered. There was one that was more blackened than the rest, but she could clearly see the woman's face and shoulders. Evie reached out a slender finger to trace the woman's hair.
"You must be Lady Elizabeth."
Though blistered, the painting still reveals an elegant figure with calm, perceptive eyes. Evie tilted her head, studying it closely. The brushwork, older, conservative, yet an unmistakable depth in the eyes, a kind of knowing.
"You were understood and loved,"
she thought. She leaned closer toward the second painting, an older woman, confident, warm, and beautiful. Evie's fingers hovered just above the blistered paint.
"So like his eyes,"
Evie whispered into the extreme quiet of the room. The thought lingered, unbidden, the gentleman's quiet gaze at Lady Ashcombe's townhouse, that night's golden light, the Turner seascape storm breaking over the sea. She straightened, shaking off the memory. More briskly, Evie looked once more at the portrait. The Duke's mother, Lady Eleanor, her painted gaze solemn, maternal, almost watchful.
"There's kindness in her face. Perhaps the daughter will find comfort here too."
She turned away, though her reflection lingers faintly in the gilded frame. Two women of different worlds, each carrying what they cannot say aloud. The sunlight slants through the high windows. Dust motes drift like gold in the air. Evie nodded her head silently. She felt comfortable signing the restoration agreement, but she knew the commission was likely a package, and so she would have to wait for the news of the functions and gatherings. There she'd be able to decide whether she could sign the contract. She stepped back into the carriage, unaware of what was about to be set in motion, a chain neither she nor the brothers can yet name. Chapter 8. The Gardens at Holland House. The season's first formal gathering under a sun-washed sky. It is one of those rare London afternoons when the air feels almost Italian. Soft light glancing off silk and parasol, the murmur of laughter and conversation threading through the lawns. Lady Evangeline Wintham, possessed of a kind of self-contained serenity, walked beside her aunt, Lady Vanessa, paused to admire a bloom or greet an acquaintance. She was there not as the Duke of Ashbury's daughter, but as a guest of her aunt's, while also quietly fulfilling the terms of a potential commission for Everley. She told herself she was only there to observe, to determine whether the commission felt right. But when she turned toward the rose garden, the noise of the crowd faded. Her aunt's eyes widened in pleasant surprise. I believe that is the Duke of Blackhaven, and his brother, the Duke of Eversley. It is good to see them out in society again. I've not seen the older brother since your father's gathering last season. Evie followed her gaze. The two men stood together in quiet conversation. Gabriel, the Duke of Blackhaven's dignified bearing softened by his gentler companion beside him. She noticed the older, refined woman behind them, talking with a small girl, and assumed it was Amelia with the Duke's grandmother. And then the fire happened. What a tragedy for their family. Poor things. I simply cannot imagine what they've endured, her aunt said in a low, troubled voice. The two gentlemen stood at the far edge of the path. One of them turned slightly, and the world seemed to narrow. The gentleman from the gallery stood a few mere yards away, sunlight glancing off his dark hair. He looked back, and then bent to speak to the young girl in pale blue beside him. His expression was gentle, protective. For a moment she could not breathe. It was the same profile she recalled from that night at Lady Ashcombe's. Composed, intelligent, quietly intense. Evie's breath froze in her throat.
Of all the faces in London,
she thought. Julian glanced up, as though sensing her gaze, and for one still heartbeat, their eyes met. Recognition flared, pleasure, followed by a flicker of disbelief. The memory of that Turner seascape between them, the quiet lightning of connection that neither forgot. He recovered first, schooled his expression. Gabriel joined them speaking to a friend, and when the introductions began, fate obliged. Lady Vanessa smiled, looked toward Gabriel.
Your Grace, I believe you've met my niece, Lady Evangeline Wintham.
Yes, of course, Ashbury's daughter. I've met your father frequently at Parliament, as well as in his very own study. I believe he's soon to return to London.
Evie curtsied beautifully.
Yes, only this week, Your Grace. My mother becomes remarkably brighter with each passing day.
Gabriel laughed.
Theirs is a partnership to envy, is it not?
Indeed it is, Your Grace.
Evie smiled affectionately. Julian inclined his head. Gabriel looked over at him, then back at the ladies.
Allow me to introduce my brother, His Grace, Julian St. Clare, Duke of Eversley, Lady Evangeline Wintham, and Lady Vanessa Pembroke.
Evie curtsied again. Julian bowed. Gabriel nodded politely to the ladies.
Lady Evangeline and I have met, although unfortunately we did not have the opportunity of an introduction.
There was a slight pause. Her cheeks warmed despite her control. Gabriel's eyes widened in surprise, remembering the conversation with Julian the morning after the event. He looked over at his brother before quickly recomposing himself.
Yes, briefly at Lady Ashcombe's townhouse.
The Turner seascape,
Julian said softly. Evie's lips curved with the beginnings of a smile.
The storm breaking over the sea.
Gabriel glanced between them, faintly amused.
I see the two of you share an art appreciation. As it happens, ladies, we are in search of a capable artist this very week, so art is top of mind.
Are you? London has many fine artists. I wish you good fortune in your search.
Evie smiled while also shielding her eyes. Lady Vanessa laughed lightly, unaware of the deeper current.
Forgive me, your graces. Evie lives for her canvases. You mustn't begin on the subject, or you'll never escape.
I should have guessed, from our conversation at the gallery.
Lady Vanessa glanced between Evie and Julian with an approving gleam.
Then perhaps we'll talk further at the exhibit next week. Are you attending, your graces?
Yes, we intend to.
I hope it will be less crowded than the last.
A private knowing. Evie tipped her head in agreement. The conversation moved on, drifting to travel, to the weather, to society's endless whirl. And through it all, Julian and Evie were acutely aware of each other's presence, a quiet thread neither of them could quite untangle. Amelia approached and tugged softly at her father's hand, and he nodded as if he knew what she wanted to say. Lady Evie smiled tenderly down at the beautiful blonde girl, so solemn with a direct gaze for one so young. Lady Vanessa noticed her little tug for attention.
Come, Evie, we are keeping the gentleman.
On the contrary, the company is most welcome. But I see my daughter wishes to walk the paths. Until we meet again, Lady Pembroke, Lady Evangeline.
The brothers bowed, the ladies curtsied. Before Evie could turn away, though, Julian took Evie's hand to bow over it and bestowed a formal kiss. Despite her gloves, she felt a slight tremor of excitement. Startled by her response, she shielded her eyes once again by looking down. As they parted, Evie risked a question.
Aunt Vanessa, can you do me the favour of looking back to see if one of the brothers is watching us depart?
Her aunt winked at her. Of course, dear. I believe this is the first time you've asked for such a favour. She clucked and said, So necessary for a lady to know such things. Lady Vanessa looked back over her shoulder to find Julian doing the same. She paused briefly. What is your guess, dearest? Their gazes met.
I'd say yes.
Lady Vanessa laughed softly and patted Evie's hand. You would be correct, and I believe it's the brother we both expected it would be. Evie kept her composure, though her pulse thrummed like wings beneath her skin.
A commission with them. It cannot be. And yet...
Her thoughts trail like brushstrokes across an unseen canvas. She walked beside her aunt, still feeling the weight of his gaze between her shoulder blades. Their encounters were weaving invisible threads, each one pulling tighter than the last.
Thank you for listening. We are so pleased for you to join us on our journey. Our story is a multiple-episode Regency romance novella, so please do subscribe for next week's episode. The writer thanks you in advance for your comments, notes, and suggestions as we hope to improve with each episode and with each story. Until next time, may your days be filled with kindness and love.